once you are able to see the deeper truths of how systems work, how they connect together, you can understand how the future might unfold. What we believe as Leadapreneur is everyone must first prove themselves by delivering their own individual project. And then we can work in a pair. And then if we work well in the pair, then we can upgrade to the 5-man team. A lot of innovation programs today are working with people who are just not ready. They don't have the right skill set. They don't have the right mindset. They don't have a strong enough spirit. And so they usually fail before they've even started. You can approach your life by just saying, I want to be happy. I want to flutter around a little bit, do some nice things, get some nice prizes, and yay, I'm done. Or you can say, I stand for more. I want to build a better world. I want to build my better world. And I'm going to be the person who does that. The individual who takes responsibility has the opportunity to create change. She's no longer the helpless victim. There's a waking up process where you say, yes, I'm responsible for this, and so therefore I can change it. It was in Cambodia. Someone once asked me in a training program, how do I become a great leader? And I was just like, you must take great responsibility. You must build a great vision. And then you must mobilize great action.
Welcome to Leadapreneur.
Hey guys, welcome to the Leadapreneur Podcast. And today Jan and I are going to be talking about our clients, successful case studies that Jan personally has overseen over the past few years. So the format of today will be mostly me learning from Jan about the experiences he had, the success stories, as I've just mentioned, with our clients, the projects, the great feedback, the learning, the downfall also. So this is going to be an interesting one, and keep tuned. Good afternoon, Jan. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, Hanaa. I'm thrilled to be here.
It's
As always,
great to be
I
here.
always enjoy, not just enjoy, I love being here with you, talking the things that we do. It's enriching, challenging, helps my mind and grow so much.
Oh, wow. So much in this 1 hour conversation.
Yes,
All right.
yes. Well, all the
Looking
other ones we've
forward.
done in the past too, right?
Yes. What I
Yeah.
like about it is I get to learn so much. So much of download happens, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know the company as well as you do as a founder. So there's so much of founder knowledge that I get to learn from you. But just interestingly, before we started the podcast, we were talking about the woke.
Woke mind virus, depends who you are, what you're
the
saying.
virus. Okay, yes.
You know, before it used to be cool to be called woke, and now I guess it's a bit
Yeah,
more
I'm guessing in your
controversial,
era, right? Like it must have been cool to.
Yeah, sure. Back in my era, yes. Yeah, it was kind of, I was like, someone was like, oh, you're so woke, Jan. And I felt really like, I'm
you're
cool
woke.
and down with the kids. I'm awake, I'm
But now
not
it's
just,
a bad thing to be woke.
Well, I think with all things, woke, for me, as I understand it, represents being awakened, right? You've woken up, right? You kind of stepping outside the matrix, stepping outside the construct, outside of the traditional ways of thinking and into a new, more enlightened approach, right? That's kind of how I understood it.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge with all these things is not that the thing in itself is wrong, it's that it goes too far. And ethics is really the practice of boundary. So there's lots of good points being made in, shall we say, the woke concept, right? And for example, DEI is important, but where is there too much diversity, right? Where do we get too carried away with inclusiveness at the cost of other things? Right. And so what I think the challenge is not so much any individual component of wokeism, it's that it struggles to apply healthy boundaries that respect difference, that really thinks differently, and is able to integrate itself into a diverse worldview with different viewpoints where people who are not woke, can they get along with people who are woke? And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of conflict. Look today what's happening in Los Angeles, right? The city is burning down, right? And that's essentially a clash of ideologies there. That's at the heart of what's fueling that discontent. So I think as with all things, it's not so much the matter itself, it's just when it's taken too far.
One thing that you're very good at, Jan, is predicting the future, not the future as it is, but like you have this very good grasp on where one idea can take a person, right? So I remember about 2 to 3 years ago, you were talking about how Disney will see a movie crashing because of this wokeness. And this happened, I think this year or last year, about Disney, about the Snow White girl, where they got a girl who is not Snow White, who is not white literally, and the movie did not do well at all. So how do you come to make these predictions?
I think this is something that's been referred to as first principles thinking and looking to the deepest sets of knowledge. There's sort of knowledge that are much more ancient. Snow White is a story that comes originally from Germanic-speaking lands and is hundreds of years old, potentially even thousands of years old. And so what that represents is mythology. It is the eternal story, right? And in this case, particularly the Snow White, is the story of the feminine and masculine, how they search for each other in a world of conflict. And that's an eternal story that is told throughout time and space, and all humans go through it. What happens then, and so that's why it has this power, right? This universal power, and is universally loved, and correctly presented as maybe the classic Disneys were, it will stand the test of time.
Right.
But what happens then is something new comes along, and in this sense, that's ideology. It's a modern belief about how things should be. Feminism, lots of isms, right? Feminism, environmentalism, wokeism, right? All these things. And so what they do is they hijack these more ancient forms of knowledge and they co-opt it for their own advantage.
Right.
Because they want to tell the story in a certain way, because they believe the world should be a certain way, right? It's sort of, Ariel, the Little Mermaid, was traditionally a red-haired, white-skinned character. And in the new one, she wasn't that, right? And what happens is the conversation is shifted towards the ideological narrative. We need to talk about race. We need to talk about, these factors. Or in Snow White, we need to talk about the fact that we're not going to call her Snow White because of her skin. We're going to call her Snow White because of the snowstorm that happened. And actually, she's leading a rebellion of fairy creatures against the evil queen. That's the story you want to tell, because you want to talk about so-called empowered women. But that's not the mythological. And so what essentially has happened with Disney's is hijacked the mythological and transferred it into an ideological narrative, agenda. And that will poison the mythological, and that causes it to fail, because you're not speaking to the eternal truths anymore. You're trying to enforce a certain worldview on people. Mm-hmm. And that, what happens then is a groupthink mentality where, in very simplistic terms, you're surrounded by like-minded people who will all agree with you. But when you go to a global audience and you present this new Snow White in China, for example, it's going to be completely rejected, because they're not interested in that ideological narrative. They're not interested in it. They want to see the traditional mythology of this beautiful story. And so I think that's where what you can see is the concept of value creation in and of itself becomes lost. There's a famous quote from Tolkien, the creator of Lord of the Rings, amongst other things, where he writes that evil can never create, it can only destroy. And so what I see in some forms of these new Disney movies is that element. You're not creating anything new. You think you are, but actually what you're doing is you're just remixing the mythological and hijacking it to serve your purpose of serving, telling people how the world should be, right? And as a result of that, what you overlook is the fact that a lot of people won't agree with you. And so therefore you won't be so successful in business. And so that phrase, go woke, go broke, is something that seems to be more and more apparent. I'm a passionate video gamer, and we've been seeing that in the failure of some Assassin's Creed Japan. Concord is another famous one. There have been quite a few other, Dragon Age Origins. These were meant to be big, spectacular titles that were meant to earn billions of dollars. And literally most of them were shut down within maybe a month or two of operating because they failed catastrophically. And so what I think is so important to understand in trying to anticipate the future is looking towards what are the deeper truths that are driving reality versus the momentary truths. So the momentary truth of wokeism is something a sign of our times. It's not going to be around in 20, 30 years' time. It wasn't around 20, 30 years ago. It's not going to be around. It's
not going
temporary.
to stand the test of time.
No, it's not. I'll make another prediction. I predict that in 50 years' time, or let's say in 100 years' time, maybe when your granddaughter is watching a Disney movie, she's probably going to watch the original Lion King. She isn't going to watch the live action remake. Because there's no mythological magic in watching a real lion talk like a human. That's not what it's about, right? It's meant to be fantastic. And I think that's really where certainly what's happening in the West, from what I see, is we're just getting far too carried away with our ideological narratives. We're so focused on being right and wrong. We've lost the capacity to be wise, to look to the deeper truths and understand what might be being told in them. And as a result, we make mistakes that cause us to not be successful today. It's a similar thing, for example, I started getting interested in Bitcoin in 2017. So that was 8 years ago. Bitcoin was $1,000, Ethereum was $30. And once I was able to understand the principles of it, it was very clear to me that this is going to just unfold. And so once you are able to see the deeper truths of how systems work, how they connect together, you can understand how the future might unfold. The analogy I use is, it's a bit like if you see some rain falling in the mountain, in a valley, you can predict it's going to flow down to the bottom of the valley where there's very likely to be a river, and that river is going to flow eventually down to the sea. So by predicting that the rain is going to fall into the river, you might say, oh, but how can you know that, right? Because it's so hard to predict each raindrop. But by looking at the landscape and the way the landscape is shaped, you can anticipate how change will occur.
It's a very, very interesting way of looking at it. Well, thanks for explaining that. It helps me a little bit understand how your mind is working. But speaking of the same topic, and just now you mentioned Bitcoin, yesterday we had a conversation with the former head of HR from OCBC, and he was saying that OCBC was working with pre-COVID times because fintech was in Malaysia and they were trying to get fintech in, although they were trying to change the mindset of their people. And I remember also stories of you trying to work with the taxi industry. You were trying to tell them that they're going to get disrupted. E-hailing is going to come and they're going to get disrupted. So how did you see it at that time with OCBC? And tell me a little bit more about OCBC. What did you do? How did you drive transformation in that program?
Right. I mean, OCBC is a large, well-known Singaporean bank in Southeast Asia. One of a trio, OCBC, UOB, and DBS. And what we did with OCBC in Malaysia is try and address that challenge of, at the time, the fintech threat. Because this new, for the first time, financial services was being combined with technology players who had significantly more sophisticated capability than traditional banking players. You know, I think for me, one of the ultimate examples of this is if you use Wise, right?
Yes.
I think many people use Wise. When you compare Wise to your traditional bank, it's not even close, right? And that's sort of an example of a fintech player. So when they first started to arrive, it created a lot of fear amongst the banks that they're going to be disrupted. And so when you're thinking about changing an organization, it's useful to break it down into 3 areas of change. Foundationally, you're looking at the business model and operations. You're looking at the technology stack, hardware and software usually. And then you're looking at the people and the culture. And you could simply break down a business into these 3 areas. And all 3 of these need to change. And so you can buy new technology, you can hire, smart people to help evolve your business model. But how do you change people and culture? How do you change the mindsets? How do you upgrade skill sets? And in such a way that you're able to do it fast enough to keep up with the change. There's no point upgrading a mindset over 50 years, right? That's a bit too slow. So it's not just that you have to do it, but you have to do it in a timely manner. And so OCBC chose to work with us because they valued our help in enabling their talent to upgrade its skill set, its mindset. And then what I particularly think is most important is around the spirit. And I describe spirit as the drive to do difficult things. It's about having, if you imagine a graph, you have competency and you have care. And in the top right quadrant is you have high spirit. These are people who are very competent, but they're also, you can have people who are very competent, but they just don't care.
Right.
And they're well-paid experts, but they just don't care. And so they don't have the spirit to drive change and mobilize change, right? If your really talented, competent leader doesn't care, he or she is not going to be able to lead change inside the organization because everyone knows that they don't care and everyone can feel that they don't care. But you have a problem there. And it's not something you can fix by just paying them more money. It's not something you can fix by putting them in a workshop. Awakening that spirit, that drive, that desire is really precious and really challenging. And so that's ultimately, I think, where we really helped OCBC is in enabling their talent to have the spirit to dare to create change, to go and be daring, speak to their managers and their seniors, talk about the problems that are happening and not just talk about them, but become the solution engine, that they can identify the problem, they can communicate with their seniors that we need to solve this, and then they go about actually solving it. And I think that's where they saw the most value. It's about doing that in an individual and then, of course, at scale, not just one person, but lots of people, lots of talent, because you get a feedback loop. You get an environment where everyone cares, everyone has spirit, so everyone is driving forward together. I learned this a lot when I was playing a lot of rugby and rowing, where people who didn't care about training hard and winning the game would really bleed out the energy of the rest of the team. And that, of course, affects success, right? So it's kind of important, therefore, to prioritize just as much how much someone cares as someone who's very competent. And ultimately, if you ask me what's more important, it's care. Because you can work with a person who's really cares, really driven, she's really spirited to do difficult things, take on the challenges and make things happen. And they can learn the competencies along the way. But if you have someone who's very competent, but they just don't really care and they're not interested.
That's the hard switch.
That's a really hard switch. That's really hard because you're talking, because it's not just caring today, right? It's caring today, it's caring tomorrow, it's caring the day after. And care manifests itself in doing the difficult thing, right? So that's where you have to ask that individual to go much deeper into their sense of identity and to change themselves and to see themselves as someone who's willing to go above and beyond.
All right. So interesting take on OCBC. Let's go into Smart Axiata, because I've always heard you saying whenever we talk about the big, difficult projects or projects that scaled, you always say, oh yeah, we did that with Smart Axiata. So tell me a little bit more about it. What did you really do with Axiata? Yeah,
I mean, this is one of my most memorable client experiences, I think, because it was just an extraordinary environment. So I'd originally been in Cambodia in 2008 to 10 to help co-found Isaac Cambodia. And so I first got to meet Smart then. And they were led by one of the most remarkable CEOs I've ever met in my life, a man called Thomas Hunt, a German, but he'd been in Cambodia for quite some time. And he was just a visionary CEO. He really just believed in building it's a telco operator, and that the telco operator in Cambodia can transform the country. Because by installing 4G infrastructure, this is at a time when there was no financial payments, right, on the phones. This was all brand new stuff. So suddenly bringing into a very undeveloped country like Cambodia this really advanced technology and making it available at scale at extremely affordable prices literally changed the country, right? It literally changed the country. And Smart Axiata is one of the best run subsidiaries of Axiata, certainly was in that time. And it was thrilling to be able to work with such a visionary CEO who was very driven and ambitious for what his people could achieve, right? And that's why he engaged us as Leadapreneur. I think this was about 2015 to 2017, and we essentially did 3 iterations of our accelerator program, our corporate innovation accelerator. And what we were able to do then was to reimagine where Smart can create value beyond traditional telco. And so this was a really cool opportunity for the top talent in the organization to envision where we could go with this and how we can take the telco forward. So that was, for example, like going into payments, going into maybe they do an online, something like a Lazada equivalent, something like a Grab equivalent. I mean, it seems obvious now in 2025, but 10 years ago in Cambodia, these things were not obvious at all. And so we were exploring those different ideas and with real serious intent behind it. And so working together with him, we were whittling the idea down, and we had 5 different programs. And then we worked to iterate those programs and scale them up and make them more impactful. And as far as I'm aware, I think one of them is still running to this day. And I think it's one of the coolest. And what it was, because I think it's cool because it really demonstrates that heart commitment to building a better world and building a better nation. So what they wanted to do was provide a program for students, Cambodian students, mainly university students, but I think also some high school students, to be able to discover entrepreneurship and to support them. Because in Cambodia, because of the relative lack of development, it's not this traditional go to a good school, go to a good university, get a good job in a good corporate. That's a very, very tiny pipeline for most Cambodians, right? maybe 1%, right? Most other people are becoming entrepreneurs, starting their own, connecting to the family business. It's a different environment. And so what they wanted to do was essentially provide a program that would support the students to develop their entrepreneurial capabilities with the help of Smart. And then the crucial point was then the exit of this program, because it was super smart. The exit has 2 options. Number one, you exit into the Smart Startup Accelerator. So you do well on this student program, and then you would then get basically venture capital support from Smart for your startup idea. The other option was that you would then go work for Smart Mobile. And so it's a very clever twin strategy. So if you look at it from a business perspective, essentially what they were able to do is, if you're capturing the best talent in the country, it's very hard to compete because there are no other better people. So all the best talent at the best universities was on this SMART program. And then they're either going to work for SMART, so you're recruiting the best talent, or they're going to go set up businesses that you're investing in. And then you're in your environment. And so that was really cool because it's impacted tens of thousands of people. Now it's been running for probably nearly 10 years now. And it was really just awesome to see the impact that could create and to see how the talent in Smart Mobile created this idea and through their blood, sweat and tears brought it to life and saw that create lots of value, not just for the company, but for the country and its people. And I think what it demonstrated under Thomas's leadership is the risk to try and dare to be great, to do different things, to go outside the normal space of a telco. But in doing that move, I think he was very smart because it assured you the talent supply. If you're getting the best people in the country to connect to you through either entrepreneurship or employment, you have such a significant advantage. And I think that therefore gave him a strategic ability that wouldn't have been available to him if he hadn't had that kind of program.
So what you're describing to me, Jan, is the strategic win of this program that you run and the vision of the CEO coming to life, which was a great vision, by the way. But what about the people in the program?
Yes.
If I'm an HR looking to have such kind of program in my company, how does that impact me?
Well, I think what they did, first of all, is it really challenged the talent, because our programs are not a turn up, do the workshop, go home kind of thing, right? You have to create it, prototype it, show the data, test it out, get more investment, scale. It's a real experience that you're going through. And so what the first element there that's critical is it's about challenging the talent, not training it or teaching it. And by doing that, you're able to activate them more. That's where the engagement lies. The reason why talent is not engaged is because it's not challenged in an interesting way. So this program provided a really powerful challenge and a way for them to express that talent that they have through their own ideas and bringing them to life. And so I think that's really sort of the key point from I could say from that experience of working with Smart Axiata was the importance of being able to provide a worthy challenge environment and the support system in place to then tackle those challenges successfully.
So Jan, talk to me about Citi, because I know whenever we've talked about Citi, you've also had great pride in the work with Citi. So what did you do? What was the success from it?
Yes, so we did 3 seasons of our accelerator with Citibank in Malaysia. We also worked with them at the ASEAN level as well, but I'll focus on the Malaysia experience for now. And we did something similar with them in the first season, working in teams of up to 5 people. And we had one of the teams did something outstanding, which was essentially, this was again in 2015, 2016, something like that, where they figured out that essentially a lot of people at the time, the strategy was to send a spam SMS to everybody saying, hey, there's an offer for your Citi card holder on, this store or something like that. But it wasn't really, working so well. And so what this team said is, what if we use a smartphone and use your GPS location so that when you walk past a store where there's a Citi card offer, you would get a notification saying, hey, you just walked past Zara. And at the moment, right now, you can get 20% off if you go into the store. So this is a real-time, individualized way of providing discounts and support for people on the Citi card versus just sending them lots of spam SMS messages. And this then eventually got integrated into the global Citi app, as I understand it, and was then able to generate a massive amount of value for the organization.
Right.
So I think that was one really great example. And I know if you're listening, Christian, he was outstanding talent. And I know that it supercharged his career. And I know that it supercharged a few other careers too. And so and then it took an interesting turn because I had the opportunity to work with the wonderful Michelle Eiking. I will never forget this. She was like, Jan, the program's really great. We have people in 5-man teams, but the problem is it's just a bit too clunky and it's difficult. It's difficult to get people to do this extra work when they're already so busy. It's the classic case, right? Everyone's already 100% busy, if not 110% busy. Asking them to be in a team to then create something really new, it's just unrealistic to keep doing that at scale. It's not really viable because people just get pulled into what their KPIs are, right? At the end of the day, what you care about is your KPI, meeting that KPI, so you get your bonus and career promotion, right? So what she suggested is, what if we did an individual approach? Everyone does one individual project, and then that way they can make it much more flexible and focus on their individual KPI and create projects that are relevant for that. And then they succeed or fail based on their own merit, on their own area. And I just thought that was an absolutely brilliant idea. So then I listened to Michelle's idea and implemented it. And that became the core of the Leadapreneur approach today.
So up until then, the business model was team-based project.
Yes.
And then your interaction with Citi changed the business model of Leadapreneur.
Yes, to individual. And
Amazing.
we started to offer that. And then our clients loved it because it solves that tricky problem of how do you engage? Because the challenge is always, how do you engage people over, say, 6 months to actually do the project, right? Not a few day sprint where you create an idea and get it approved and then nothing happens afterwards, just innovation theater. So by being able to enable individuals to innovate in their area of work, you suddenly can unlock a lot more productivity because now they want to innovate. Now they want to drive things forward. And so that is, I think, is a good example of how important it is to listen to your clients, to work with them, that great ideas can come from anywhere. And I'm really glad that we were able to listen to them because I think it's been a game changer for us and stands really at the core of our methodology today as a leaderpreneur, right? A leaderpreneur can deliver that individual innovation. Yes, we can also work in teams, and at the more advanced leaderpreneur programs, you earn the right to work in a team. But what I saw so much is that in many teams, there just isn't that caliber of capability. And so what we believe as leaderpreneur is everyone must first prove themselves by delivering their own individual project. And then we can work in a pair. And then if we work well in the pair, then we can upgrade to the 5-man team. If you imagine a normal 5-man team, you're going to have someone that's really good, a couple of people are okay, and 2 people who are bad. And maybe they're bad because they're just busy, right? But in terms of their effectiveness of the team. But if you have a team of 5 leaderpreneurs who have each individually done their own individual projects, and then in the second season worked in pairs, these are battle-tested warriors ready to deliver serious innovation. Because that's what I see most in the organizations. Essentially, the talent is too fragile. It's not strong enough, basically. It's not strong enough for the entrepreneurial journey, the innovation journey. They just can't handle it. And so they struggle and they fall apart. So I think the individual model allows for a way in which you can build true capability, true talent. And then as a senior, you can leverage that real talent to deliver real outcomes. A lot of innovation programs today are working with people who are just not ready. They don't have the right skill set. They don't have the right mindset. They don't have a strong enough spirit. And so they usually fail before they've even started. And I think that's just such an overlooked area of why innovation programs don't deliver on the potential. And also, I think why we're seeing a weakness in leadership today. Today, most organizations are overmanaged, underled, and with almost essentially little entrepreneurial energy. And that's because we're not testing our talent at the individual level. We're not testing it, and we don't have rigorous standards around it. And when those standards are for us as leaderpreneur ROI, right? If you're a great leader, deliver $1 million of ROI, then you can call yourself a leader at Leadapreneur, right? We don't give you a certificate for attendance and say, now you're a leader. No. You have led other leaderpreneurs and you've led them to deliver $1 million of ROI on a strategic scorecard priority. And we can measure that and track that, and it's validated and authenticated. And this gives a much higher quality of talent. And so if you think about it, that talent pool then enables an organization to do much more because your talent is that much more capable and you have a different kind of culture now. So
was that something, that kind of culture, is that what you did with DRB-HICOM also? Or was that a different format? Because I can't remember, when did you work with DRB-HICOM?
Yeah, so DRB-HICOM was kind of coming up to the pandemic, 2017, 2018. We worked with them because they were looking at so when you're thinking about your talent pipeline, the graduate scheme becomes very important because it's the entry for talent. And so you hire great talent out of university and you want to give them a great challenge so they can prove themselves, earn their stripes, get to know the organization better. And that then sets them up for the next, let's say, decade into the organization. That's your ambition with the talent program, graduate program. So we worked with the graduate scheme and essentially use that individual methodology to challenge the graduates to prove themselves and say, okay, you're on this scheme. Let's see what you can do, right? And they came from different subsidiaries of DRB-HICOM. And I remember one of my favorite projects was a lady who worked with Alan Flora and was looking at, essentially, she built a whole new mechanical device to be much more efficient at extracting water from waste. So that enables them to have a huge increase in efficiencies, because if you're extracting water from waste, your trucks aren't spending so much energy driving wastewater around, right? And if you scale that up at a country level, which is Alan Flora working at, it's a massive saving. And it was really cool to see this talented young lady, mid-20s, fresh out of university, with this bright idea, build the prototype, get people to weld it, put it together for her. Literally, right? It's not an app, right? It's literally a physical thing.
And she built that prototype.
Yeah, she built it. Wow. Yeah, and so she got it built. I don't think she asked it, put some hands on, but she got other people to help her, which is a key component of leadership, right? And so she was able to achieve that outcome, and I think that is a great example of how it's not just that it's the person. It's not just that it's the project that is valuable, but how has she grown? How has she been transformed? And how is that going to set her up for the next few years on her talent trajectory? Right? I think it's a really significant advantage versus having just done a workshop, right? And so I think that's a good example of where the Leadapreneur methodology empowers talent to shine bright and to do remarkable things. And in the process of it, help the organization achieve a significant return on its investment in that talent.
Speaking of talent, and I'm noticing that in all of your case study that we're looking at, you're mostly talking about the extraordinary talent, because I think that's what we are doing essentially, is building innovative leaders.
Yes.
And I don't know if you remember this. I think you do. We've talked about it when you were working with AXA, just around the cusp of pandemic, like COVID was already there and then we were just about to get shut down into lockdown and whatnot. So this talent was going to present an idea on doing insurance on the blockchain. And then she had this big idea. She came and she's like, okay, this is what I want to do. And then the next day, I think on the presentation day, the third day was a presentation. She said, no, I'm not going to pursue it because my manager says it's not a good idea.
Yes.
And I remember you being very disappointed. I mean, not just with the whole hierarchy of manager telling you what to do, but also you were disappointed in this talent that you're not being brave enough to just go ahead and do it. I remember you being very, because I was like, why are you not upset with AXA as a management, not telling her that? Why are you upset with this lady? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Well, I think many people are in this situation, so I'm sympathetic towards it. I first would like to make that point. It's not that I'm a heartless creature, but the most foundational element of being a leaderpreneur and indeed being a leader is to take responsibility. And if you take responsibility, it's because you care about something and you're driven towards doing it. So in her choosing not to proceed, she is failing in her duty of the responsibility that she assumed to try and make a difference, right? Why has she created this blockchain project? Because she had an idea, a vision for solving something. And then you go forward and then you encounter adversity and difficulty. And so you give up. Okay. Well, why did you give up? What was the point in trying in the first place? Did it matter to you, that first sense of taking responsibility? How serious were you in yourself? So what happens in these situations, and I've seen this, happen over my 20 years of experience, is what's happening there is that person is letting themselves down. And that's, hard to say, but I say that as a teacher because only when I say that can there be clarity about how to proceed. In terms of taking responsibility, it's not that it's the truth that it is your responsibility. You can always say it's not my responsibility. It's the company's fault. It's the manager's fault. It's the system, the culture.
It's Jan's fault.
It's usually my fault. It's definitely my fault. Yeah. But the problem with that is you become powerless and helpless.
Right.
You're just a victim. You're just a leaf fluttering around in the wind. And you cannot be great. Not because you can't be great, but because you've chosen not to become great. Because you've chosen to say, I'm not responsible for this. Responsibility is the foundational act that grounds you in reality to say, I am here, I will do something about this. I will. Not my boss, not my team, I will. I stand for this. You stand essentially in the tide of change, standing against entropy and saying, not today. We're going to fight to make a better world. And in doing that, that's where you have the opportunity to discover your true potential. And so when in saying that, it was sad for me to see her give up on her potential. Mm-hmm. It was sad for me to see that this person who had a bright spark and could shine and go forward was, for whatever reasons, not able to continue that through. And I think that's just a really sad thing, because it's precious. And so that's, I think, a lot of what the challenge is in becoming a leaderpreneur, is the burden of responsibility and learning how to handle that, because it's a double-edged sword. It empowers you, but it also weighs you down. Of course, there's factors of the culture. Of course, there's factors that come into play around that. You know, often in these large organizations, decisions are made abroad or not in the country, right? It's out of your control. Yes, that's fair, but there's always a reason why you can't do things, right? Mm. And so it's really about that spirit in pushing and driving yourself to do the difficult thing because you care, right? And so that's that critical mechanism there that I think lies at the heart of success, right? Going back to our conversation right at the beginning about those first principles, understanding the basic things. You give me someone who has a strong sense of responsibility, she takes responsibility and she really cares, then you can work with that person and do pretty much anything, right?
I know that mindset of taking responsibility is one of the core oaths of the leaderpreneur spirit, right? If I remember it correctly, like you take responsibility of seeing your journey through.
Yes.
And often in any training or workshop or innovation program, when you have a bunch of people, not everyone is going to perform to that level, right? Some people are going to, some people are not going to, some people are going to do mid, some people are going to do terribly. But my first question is, how do you address that at scale? All these participants coming into your program, how do you bring that mindset of this is your responsibility, you have to rise? Number one, that's at scale question. And number two is, while you were talking about it right now, as an individual, it reminded me of the responsibilities I took and why I would just blame it on you. Jan, the CEO, it's just Jan's fault, right? Even though jokingly, but I think there is a part of me doing that because you don't want to assume your responsibility. So it's similar to me, I'm assuming there are professionals out there who, when things do not go our way, would just blame it on someone, right? Or be the big victim or blame the system. So how do you solve that at scale? And how do you solve that at an individual level? Because it's a constant reminder that you don't remind yourself of every day.
Yeah. Well, let's go in reverse order here, right? Great, tough questions. Mm-hmm. In terms of that individual, without that sense of responsibility, you are just powerless. You have no power. You are just blown away you're blown around in the winds of change. So, it's his fault, it's her fault, I couldn't happen. There's just an endless stream of excuses and there's no performance, there's no outcome, right? Because it depends how you want to approach your life, right? You can approach your life by just saying, I want to be happy, I want to flutter around a little bit, do some nice things, get some nice prizes, and yay, I'm done. Or you can say, I stand for more, I want to build a better world. I want to build my better world. And I'm going to be the person who does that. And this is why I created Leadapreneur and the concept of a leaderpreneur, because the world only exists because people build it. Everything here was built by somebody, right? Everyone was built because someone took responsibility for building. This microphone works because someone took responsibility to make it work well. This logo has been printed out nicely because someone took responsibility for it. That camera is working. It's all working because people took responsibility. And that's essentially what makes the world work. So you need to decide what kind of person you want to be. Do you want to just be in it for yourself and operate at the egoic level of reality, in which you're just trying to get by and take as little blame as possible and maximize everything that you claim as yours? Or do you step into a higher state of consciousness in which you realize that it's actually about being a world builder, being a responsible leader who cares about their people, their organization, their community, and then does what is necessary to ensure their success? This is a whole different capability. And that's essentially one of the great challenges in this world that we're in today, this sort of postmodern, post-global age, where people don't want to take responsibility. Mm-hmm. Indeed, one of the trends that we're seeing is, especially in the Gen Z, they don't want to be promoted to manager. Right? They're quite happy where they are because it's too much responsibility, right? And it's not. I'm not making a sense of saying you're a better person or not per se. Everyone makes their own choices, but there are significantly different outcomes. the individual who takes responsibility has the opportunity to create change. She's no longer the helpless victim. There's a waking up process where you say, yes, I'm responsible for this, and so therefore I can change it. If you're not responsible, you can't change it. And you'll always be the helpless victim who whines away complaining about stuff. Right? You don't become the reality engine. You don't become the world builder. And so your pathways will be different. So then when we look at doing that at scale, right, it's about, you said, you have to take responsibility. I wouldn't use that phrase. I would say, I dare you to take responsibility. You don't have to. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. Fine. But you're not going to rise. You're not going to rise. You're going to remain small. You're going to remain weak. You're going to remain helpless. Only by taking great responsibility, building a great vision, taking great action, do you have a hope to realize your full potential. So what we then do is we create that inspirational energy at scale. And that's, of course, the gamification mechanism. No, I dare you to become an explorer. Go forth and find problems worth solving, right? I remember I was talking to a client once and they was introducing the individual methodology, right? And they're like, but there aren't that many problems in the organization. Where do we find all these problems? Like, well, that's exactly the point. Not that the problems aren't there, is that you haven't discovered them. It's not that the unknown lands aren't there, it's that you haven't discovered them, right? So by activating explorer energy, you go find them. Then you want to take responsibility at a higher tier. Now I'm going to fight to make this problem better. Mm-hmm. This problem, let's say this Excel spreadsheet is costing our team 100 hours a month of wasted time, right? Because it's such a big burden. What if I take responsibility for automating that, right? We bring in some AI, we bring in some streamlined data flows, we build some dashboards, we can solve this. Yes, it's not my job scope, but by taking responsibility for that, I've discovered this problem and now I'm going to fight to solve it. Now I become a different kind of person. I rise. Because that's how you become great, is you take on great challenges. And so what I see today is a lot of it, this ambition for greatness, but there are no shortcuts. You have to walk the hard path. And so that's one of my favorite phrases is the greater the challenge, the greater the opportunity to grow. How great do you dare to be? And that's where the price is paid in blood, sweat, and tears. And that's where a maturity is required when you want to become a leaderpreneur, a change agent, a reality engine, is there will be blood, sweat, and tears. And then people say, yes, it's hard. And then I say, yes, it's hard. And then you're going to die. And that's the end of your life. Everything else is up to you. So it's coming into consciousness about yourself and saying, who do you want to be in this lifetime? You have a precious gift. We sit in one of the most exciting moments in human history, the arrival of artificial intelligence. We stand on the threshold of the extraordinary and the magical. Do you want to be a participant in this, in your way? Or do you want to just be a helpless victim of the change, blowing around, always feeling lost, always feeling confused? Both are hard. It's just as hard not taking responsibility as it is to take responsibility. That's the great truth. It's just how much courage you have to bring your character forth and step into your truth and fight for what you believe in, and to then walk the difficult journey until you've built that better world. And the way you know you built the better world is when other people tell you, hey, good job. You built that better world. Thank God we don't have that Excel spreadsheet anymore, right? For example, so I think it's, a key phrase in the Leadapreneur concept is build your better world. The world is a very big place. Don't worry about that. Build your better world. Focus on your local reality. Make that little bit better. Make your little space that little bit better. And that's enough. I'm not saying you have to become a sort of hero like Elon Musk figure, right? That's not realistic for pretty much everybody, right? But we can still rise to our own greatness. And I think that's really what the Leadapreneur spirit is about, daring to do that, because you care. It's the heart energy that mobilizes you to do the difficult thing. And that's why we call it the warrior. The warrior fights from the heart, not from the head. They fight because they care.
Well, Jan, I'm really glad we had this conversation, because that just makes me realize more on the type of organization we are, that we are enabling people to build a better world. And at the core of it, to take responsibility, to rise from greater challenges, to, what did you say? Great challenges come with great responsibility?
The greater the challenge, the greater the opportunity to grow.
All right.
Well, and then in that sense, it was in Cambodia. Someone once asked me in a training program, how do I become a great leader? And I was just like, you must take great responsibility. Mm-hmm. You must build a great vision. and then you must mobilize great action.
Right.
The trick is to do that.
It was also, I would say, great learning from you talking about all these participants, right? They took the responsibility to at least bring a part of the vision to life, whether that was through a prototype or voicing it out in a presentation, a mock-up, but at least they took the responsibility to find the problem and a solution.
Yes.
And we've been doing that for, you've been doing that for 15 years now, and we've had over 60,000 people in the program. And the goal is to reach 1% of the humanity, right? That's a big goal.
Well, I think because you're talking about the scale, we need that scale of world builders. The foundational issue today as a European, we don't have enough world builders in Europe. We have lots of administrators. That's important. Don't get me wrong. We need that. But we don't have people who are building the future. And so the cosmos collapses because everyone is just there's no one there to build it. Entropy sets in. It just starts to fall apart. And that's where, the Leadapreneur mantra, right? Believe in yourself, be brave, be bold, be brilliant, build your better world, is actually integrating this leadership technology I mentioned. It's first the belief in yourself is to awaken into reality. I can create the change. I can actually do it. I don't know how, but I believe I can do it. And it's important to recognize it's a belief, not knowledge. Not I know I can do it. I believe I can do it. So therefore I can find a way. Be brave. Be brave is about taking responsibility. It's scary to take responsibility. It's easier not to take responsibility, but that's why you must be brave. Be bold. Bold in what? Bold in creating your vision for the future. Have a bold vision for the future, not just a small one. Really dream big. And then be brilliant. Be brilliant in your action. Be at your best, shine bright, right? Don't just be comfortable going through your life. Bring your full talent to bear. Unleash your full potential, right? And what is it all for? To build your better world. And so that's really where it's encoded in the mantra. And I believe, actually, I really believe I call it inner technology. By practicing the Leadapreneur mantra, and I've been doing that all my life, basically, right? I can tell you, it changes everything because you're reprogramming yourself into a higher state of consciousness in which you are much more capable. Not 10% more capable, you're like 10,000% more capable. And and if we think about in an organization, if you imagine that in an organization, 30% of people are taking responsibility, building a vision, taking great action, right? And they're building a better organization. Now you have a whole new capability. Imagine if 1% of humans were these visionary leaders doing that. That's where we have an opportunity to take on the big, scary challenges, maybe like climate change and beyond. Right? It's only going to be solved by people doing those things.
Thank you for this conversation, for your time. And I, for one, I'm going to use the responsibility talk with my team. I think you guys are here. When they're going to ask me a question, I'm like, take responsibility of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's try that. Thank you guys for listening to us. If you've been listening to us till the very end, and see you next time.